Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be reviewing the Andream Head Unit, which is an Android head unit for the BMW E90 or E60. And they do come in the CIC or CCC model, so you just need to find out what your car has as factory before you buy this. But first thing we're going to do is have a look at the menus and just kind of things that it comes with, what it looks like, and then we'll come back up and we'll talk about the pros and cons and everything else. Alright, so when you start the head unit, this is pretty much the screen you'll see. You might see a different kind of theme, but we've actually changed the theme, which I'll show you how to do later. So yeah, it might look a little bit different, but basically all the same menus are there and everything's pretty much similar. So the first thing you can see is music. So this is the music player. It'll play songs from your USB stick that you'd have plugged in the glove box. And I don't think Bluetooth music's played through here, but let's just go home. Actually, I'll pause this so we can... there. Just pause that. Next thing along is navigation, and with this you can set the default navigation app. So this came with iGo maps, which we've changed to Cygic just to do some testing. The GPS and everything works perfectly fine, but we'll get onto some things later in the review where there are some issues. The maps that they sent us didn't actually come with Australian maps, so we found a way to download them. But we'll go to that a bit later. Phone is just Bluetooth, so you can make calls. That all seems to work really well, and you can play music through there as well. Alright, so this is the Bluetooth screen. Everything kind of works pretty well here. The sound volume and the quality of the calls and stuff is pretty much the same as factory. The only problem is I'm not going to show you it because there's private numbers in there, but if you do go to the address book or the number book, they're all in a weird order. Don't seem to be in alphabetical order or anything like that. We haven't found a way to fix that up or make them alphabetical. So it's a bit weird, but other than that, all this seems to work okay. You can play music from the Bluetooth and all that seems to work pretty well. Let's go back home. If you're familiar with Android, then you'll be familiar with all these kind of buttons at the top. So you've got the home button, the time, Wi-Fi connectivity. I think that tells you if there's USB stick connected, whether you connect to Bluetooth. This just turns, this just turns the screen off. So if you're driving, the screen's a little bit bright, you can turn that off, tap it to turn it back on. This is just your task manager, so all the things you already have open, which you can just swipe to get rid of. So we'll just swipe all them away, and then that's just to go back. Oops, I pressed that one again. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's just to go back. So it's got a browser. Oops, sorry. Yep, phone. Next thing is HD video, so you can play videos off the SD card if you've got one in here, or a USB stick. This just came with it, so it's got some Ant-Man trailer. I won't leave that playing for too long, or I'll get copyright striked. But yeah, that all works well. Oops. Then you got media list where you can search whether you're using USB stick or the SD card. And car info, this just takes you back to the original screen. What's really good about this head unit is you can go from the Android interface back to the original BMW interface by holding the menu button or by tapping the screen in a place where there's no text or anything, just like that. But you can also do it by holding the menu button down where the toggle is near gear shifter, which I'll show you a close-up of later. Browser, which is to browse the internet, we haven't really used that much. File manager allows you to see all the files on the head unit and the SD card. That seems to work fine. DVR doesn't work because we don't have another camera. We do have a reverse camera, but this is like if you've got a front camera that you want to record the video of, or a crash camera or whatever. This dashboard feature is pretty cool. So it's got the kind of like a dashboard of the car. It tells you your speed, your RPMs, and also if you open a door and things like that, it tells you that you've left a door open or your lights are on and things like that. If your handbrake's up or your seatbelt's not on, it's got the time, temperature, things like that. I actually have never seen the temperature work, so I'm not sure if that does work. But yeah, that looks pretty cool. You can change the colors of this over here as well, just by tapping the left gauge. So you can choose from those colors there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Just go back. And easy connection, which is phone mirroring. We haven't really tried that. It's not something we'd probably use. And then apps just takes you to where all your apps are, and you can obviously jump on the Android store and get whatever apps you want. And settings just takes you into the settings. So we'll just go through these really quickly. So you've got navigation, which will ask you what the standard the default navigation software you want to use is. So when you press the navigation button, you can choose from all those. Like I said, it came with iGo. We've tried all of these, and we're going to get into some of the issues with the maps a little bit later. System is just a lot of things to do with the reverse camera. So if you want to mirror it, parking lines. So what it does is when you turn the steering wheel, it has those lines that move, which is really good. Yeah, just mainly things to do with the camera. Volume is where you set all the volumes. We're going to come back to this as well because there's some issues with that. Sound is just like the preset of sound, so bass, treble, all those kind of things. So yeah, language is where you obviously pick the language of the head unit. Remember, I think if you've watched the install video, this came shipped in Chinese. I don't know why, so we just had to change that to English. The time. So if you go into time, this thing is a little bit weird as well because it's got time synchronization. Car time is what I understand. It should get the time from the car. But if we're looking at the cluster of the actual car, it says 3:42, so it's in 12-hour time. Whereas even though this is picked car time and 12-hour, it's on 24-hour now, but if we pick 12-hour, it still stays on 24-hour time, as you can see. Sometimes it goes back to 12-hour, but then it defaults back to 24-hour time, so I don't know why that is. But if we go to... if you change between them, yeah, it works. Now you can see it's 12-hour time, but for some reason it will flick back to 24-hour time sometimes after a while. Really weird. Android takes you to the Android settings, so what you expect to see if you've used Android before. Yeah, just all that kind of stuff. Nothing really in there to do with the head unit so much. And factory. So this is how you get to the factory settings of the screen. So they tell you not to go in here because you can make some changes that might stop the screen from working properly, but I'm going to tell you how you get in. It's 1314. Hopefully it's the same on yours. Give it a go. Some things you actually have to get in here to fix, like I showed you that car dashboard before. When you opened the right door on the actual display opened. The way this came, the left door was opening because it's obviously defaulted to a left-hand drive, where in Australia we have a right-hand drive. So in this factory settings, we were able to fix that. I'm not too sure what all this is. It just seems to be certain apps. There's quite a few settings in here. So remember the last mode. So you can have it to, when you start the car, it'll boot up in the original BMW interface, or you can have it boot to the Android interface. So remember the last mode just means, if you enable that, just means if you're on Android when you turn the car off, it'll be on Android when you start the car next time, so on and so forth. So DVR is just if you're using a front camera, I believe. It's CVBS, I think, is if it's an RCA plug camera, and USB is if you're using USB camera. So yeah, you kind of have to get into these settings if you've got things you want to change, where they don't really like you going in here. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of important things in here. Bluetooth selection, so if you were to receive a call, it'll decide whether to go to Android or the original BMW Bluetooth system or interface. So they've got just set to Android at the moment. Amplifier, whether you're using aftermarket amplifier or OEM, that's just set to OEM because the car's just factory. 360 camera, I'm guessing that's similar to the other one, which we're not using. Automatic brightness, I'm not sure what width lamp control is. I'm guessing that means when you turn the headlights on, it dims, or when it's bright outside, it dims and brightens up and things like that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that's what it is. Unit selection, whether you're metric or imperial. AHD camera selection, this just looks like where you select the resolution and hertz of the camera, of a camera, but I don't think we're using that, so it's just set to not supported. And then video in motion, if you disable that, it won't let you play videos and things like that while you're driving, but we've got that disabled. Then you've got vehicle settings, so I think we're at the top, yep. So auxiliary switching modes, not 100% sure what that does, but we've just set that automatic. I think it means when something starts playing through the auxiliary, it switches over to it. And then aux auto switching here, it's got Alpine, Harman and other, so I think that's if you've got an Alpine sound system or Harman Kardon, or I'm not too sure what other is, but we've got that set to other and it seems to work. Don't know what knob type is. I'm not sure if they're talking about the knob down where the gear stick is or not. I don't know what that is. The knob type could actually be to do with CIC and CCC systems, because they both have a different kind of knob in the dashboard, in the center console. Door settings, so this is where I was talking about before. When you open the right door, the left one was coming up. If you change to right driver's seat, that basically means right-hand drive, and that's left-hand drive. And the number of doors, this is a convertible, so I've set it to 2-door, whereas it came factory on 4 doors. And Speedo selection, this is what you select your Speedo tops out at. I think this is all just for that that gear cluster thing I showed you before, and whether your car's auto or manual. So map key selection is if you hit the nav button on your center console where the knob switch is, whether it will go to the original car's navigation or the Android navigation. I think mode key selection is if you press the mode key on the steering wheel, it will change between modes. voice key selection, so there's a few options there if you hold down or tap or hold down the voice key on your steering wheel. We've just got it set to short press opens voice command and long press opens navigation. Collect CAN bus data, not really sure what that does. It's probably for debugging or something like that. And then car display. This is just different kind of resolutions and stuff for different cars, so I'd leave that as it is. I wouldn't touch that if it looks fine.
Different screen size.
Yeah, different screen sizes for different cars, like you've got E60 there and things like that. This is set up as an E70. Screen just turned off. This is just set up as an E70, which I think is correct for the E90. But yeah, if it looks fine, I probably wouldn't play with it just in case. Yeah, it's set for an E70, which is an X5, but they might have the same screens, so that's fine. But yeah, I wouldn't play with that unless you have any issues with the resolution, because you might get it to a point where you can't kind of get back to this again. CAN protocol is where you choose CCC, CIC or NBT, but this is CIC, so we've got CIC selected obviously. UI configuration, this is what I was talking about before when I said you can change the theme of what the interface looks like. The way it shipped with was ID5, which looked okay, but ID6 seems to look a lot better. It's a lot cleaner, but you can play around with those yourself. Profile import, I think you can import a file with all these settings saved, but we haven't really played with that. And then you've got boot logo, which is just the logo that shows when the car starts up or when the screen starts up. So I think that's about it in terms of a tour of the actual radio. So I'll show you what happens. You can hold down the menu button in the center console, which will take you back to the original BMW interface, so you can listen to the radio. Just turn that down. So you can listen to the radio and flick back to the Android one. I'm not sure, and another thing, sorry, I forgot to mention, you can use the knob to go through the Android screen as well. Some things are a bit hard to get to because there's a lot more options, but it is touchscreen, so that's good. So yeah, you play the radio through the factory system, but I'm not sure. You might be able to get a radio app for the Android one to kind of have everything all in the one place, but it is good. You can flick back to the original unit to get to all your old stuff like vehicle information, the servicing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty good. So what we're going to do now is come back out and we're going to tell you the pros and cons of the unit, what we think of it, the things that we've had some trouble with and everything like that. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the close-up look of the radio, or the stereo, the screen, whatever you want to call it. So just in terms of price before we get started, it was $425 US plus free shipping. This is direct from Andream, and it says Andream US, but I believe it did come from China. So this is my dad's car and his head unit. I just helped him install it and went through a lot of this stuff with him just so I could review it. He was tossing up between quite a few brands before he bought this. One of them was Extrons, then there was C-Cane, and there was a couple others I can't remember the names of, but a lot of them were either more expensive or they were outdated versions of either technology or Android. So a lot of them were still Android 8 or 9. A lot of them just didn't have the same RAM and things like that. So this, in terms of specs and price, was really, really good. So that's why he went for this one. I haven't actually heard of this company before. The companies that I've heard of before are mainly E9 and C-Cane. E9 unfortunately don't make one for this car, and I've been a big fan of their stuff in the past. And C-Cane as well have been pretty good. For my partner's Mazda has a C-Cane unit in it, but the C-Cane was quite expensive, and like I said, E9 don't actually make them for this car. So the first thing I want to talk about is the pros of the screen or the unit, and that is that the screen's really, really nice. It's really nice and sharp. It's an IPS screen, so even when you're looking at your factory BMW menus and all that, it just looks way sharper than it would have before. And it just brings the car into more of the future, because now you've got, even though this car had factory navigation, in my opinion it was pretty ugly, so now you've got Google Maps, Sidekick, all the pretty much every navigation app you want from the Android App Store you can use on it. It's got Bluetooth like the car originally did, but you can actually play music and stuff through it, whereas with a factory Bluetooth, I don't think you could play music through it. I think it was only for phone calls. Yeah, and just pretty much any app you want from the Android App Store you can get on this head unit. You can play videos and all that kind of stuff. So just for your reference, this car is a 2009 E93 335i, so some of the options and things I'm talking about might be different with your car. I know this car doesn't play the music through the Bluetooth, but a lot of the, maybe the newer models do. But yeah, this one didn't, so it allows you to do that now. And the thing I really like about it is you can switch back to the original BMW interface to look at your service intervals. You can still use that Bluetooth if you want to. If you've got a TV, that still works. So yeah, I find that really, really good. Yeah, the screen's sharp and looks really good. And like I said, it brings the car into the future. That's obviously the main pros, and the price for me, I think that's pretty fair compared to the other brands and what you're getting. I would have loved to have been able to test some of the other brands to see if they had some of the same issues and things as this did, but unfortunately I didn't get to do that, so this is the only one I have to review. and a lot of the other companies like wouldn't get back to us quickly and things like that, whereas Andream were pretty quick to get back to us. The few issues we've had, my dad's emailed them and they've gotten back to us relatively quickly, and there is a bit of a language barrier as you'd expect, but they've been pretty helpful, I must admit. So yeah, in terms of the more pros, it fits really well in the dash. It looks factory, which I really like. And when it comes to the install, if you watched our install video, I think the install was actually pretty easy. There was just a couple of things that made it hard for us because we didn't know basically how they worked. So one thing you need to understand with this, if you have auxiliary in your car, you have to actually run an auxiliary cable from the back of this screen, so the new loom, down to your auxiliary plug in your glove box, which is a little bit annoying, but you have to do that. If you don't have an auxiliary jack in your car, you have to actually get an FM or Bluetooth transmitter is what they say, but I'm not sure because I haven't tried it. This car has auxiliary in, so we did have to run that cable into the glove box, which was a little bit strange. I'm not sure why it can't pull or push the audio through the original radio because the looms are connected, but yeah, that was a little bit weird. And it was hard to push the original radio back in with all the new cables and all the new looms and stuff there. So those two things were probably the hardest thing about the installation, but once you know about those, then it's pretty easy, I must admit. It's easy to take apart this car, it's easy to put it back together. Yeah, and like when we pushed the original radio back in, we actually cut some of the original kind of radio harness. That's just plastic. We cut some of that and everything fit back together a lot easier. So if you watch the review, it's going to be 100% helpful for you. So if you are buying one of these, definitely watch that video because it's going to make things a lot easier when it comes to install. So yeah, in terms of install, I'd say it was pretty easy once we knew those things. So another one of the pros is that in terms of the sound quality and things like that, it's pretty much exactly the same as it was before because the screen's actually not really outputting any of the sound. Your original radio still is. The screen is basically just that. It's a screen that links to your original radio. So the original radio is outputting all the sound and things like that. So yeah, it sounds exactly the same as it did factory, which is good. So yeah, to wrap up all the pros, basically the screen's sharp. It's really nice to look at. It brings the car into the future. Like I said before, this car's a 2009 model. And even though to me, this car feels like it's still new, it's actually 11 years old now. So some of the technology is a little bit outdated. I find BMW's navigation software doesn't look really that good at the best of times. Even in their newer models, I think it looks outdated as it is. So yeah, it's good because you can get YouTube, the internet, updated navigation, which you don't have to worry about downloading maps and things for. You can use Google Maps, which is live data. I like how you can put a SIM card in it, which means you don't have to worry about tethering your phone or anything like that. So if you want to use the internet, you can buy a separate SIM card for it and just have it dedicated to the radio. So your YouTube, maps, all that kind of thing, Spotify. But yeah, all that stuff works really well. Screen is sharp. Install was pretty easy once we knew those two things. But now I'm going to go through a list of some of the cons that are a little bit annoying with this screen. So the first one is that the phone book for your Bluetooth, the names all seem jumbled up and there doesn't seem to be a way to sort them by alphabetical order or anything like that. They're all just all over the place. There is a refresh button you can press that I think just pulls the contacts off your phone again, and every time you press it, it seems to jumble them up differently each time. So not sure if there's a fix for that. And anything that I'm mentioning here, if you have a head unit that's the same as this or similar, let me know in the comments below if you found a fix for them. So my dad has emailed them about a couple of the issues, some of the things they've got back to him about, some of the things he's still waiting on. Yeah, so that phone book thing is a little bit weird. The next issue is one with navigation, and that's that when you're being navigated, sometimes the volume is really erratic, or pretty much the volume's always erratic. So sometimes it's really loud, like deafening, even though your car volume's turned down. And then sometimes it's quite low. So we've tried different GPS software and different settings and things like that. And you can set the navigation volume in the Android settings, but it seems to ignore that sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. What we found is if you open the Bluetooth menu, so if you go to the Bluetooth app basically in the screen and then go back to the navigation, it works perfectly fine in terms of the volume. The volume can be controlled by the steering wheel or the car's factory volume knob, but eventually all of a sudden it'll just become erratic again, where the volume will be really loud, almost deafening, and sometimes only comes out of the left speaker, which I'm guessing they've done that for left-hand drives. But if you go to your Bluetooth and then back to navigation, so if your Bluetooth app is open, it seems to work out of both speakers and the volume's good. But yeah, so we're not too sure what the issue with that is yet. My dad has emailed him about that, but he's waiting for a reply on that. So I'll just elaborate quickly on the point that I made where the navigation volume is erratic. It only seems to do that if you're playing something from the original BMW menu. So if you're listening to the radio or CD, DVD through the original BMW interface, and then you go to the Android interface and use the GPS, that seems to be when the volume issue is there. But if you stick within the Android interface and you're listening to music through the Android screen, so Spotify, YouTube, anything like that, the volume is perfectly fine. You can turn it up through the car's factory volume knob and it goes up, and so does the navigation volume. But it's when you're listening to anything through the factory car's radio, like the radio or CD or DVD through the car's original interface, that's when the issue is there. So for some people that might not be a big issue because they might always listen to Spotify and things like that. Like myself, I never listen to the radio. I've always got Spotify or YouTube playing, and so it wouldn't be an issue for me. But for my dad, he likes to listen to the radio all the time and use the navigation at the same time. So that's when it becomes an issue. So for some of you, it might not be an issue. Either way, we're still going to try and sort it out and find out what the issue is. But yeah, just thought I'd elaborate on that because it may not affect you all that much. Other than that, it's pretty good. There's some other cons. My dad said a couple times it did lock up, like it kind of crashed, but it hasn't done that for a while now. So it might have been just a matter of needing to download updates for apps and software and things like that. And yeah, I think that's about it. Sometimes when you do return to the BMW interface, the screen goes fuzzy for a couple seconds, but that's not really anything major. The reverse camera, I forgot to mention the pros, the reverse camera works really well. One of the things is when we first installed this, there was an issue with the reverse camera, but you might not have that issue. So if you have a factory reverse camera, it should work perfectly fine. Or if you have an aftermarket reverse camera that you've bought and installed with this screen that you've plugged in via RCA, you shouldn't have a problem. But with my dad's one, when he had the original screen, so the original BMW screen, he bought a reverse camera and an emulator, so the factory car could have a reverse camera. So the reverse camera wasn't working when we first installed this screen, so what we had to do is unplug the RCA cable from the emulator and plug it directly into the reverse camera port of the new screen, and then it worked perfectly. But like I said, if you've got factory if you've got factory reverse camera, or you've got an aftermarket one that you'll be installing along with installing this screen, then you won't have any problems. But if you do have an emulated reverse camera, you might have that problem. So just unplug it from the emulator and plug it directly into the RCA jack for the reverse camera on the new screen, and that'll work perfectly. So yeah, those are the only real major cons. Unfortunately, the one with the navigation and the volume thing is a pretty big one, because my dad likes to use the navigation all the time, especially when he's got the radio playing, and it's just sometimes absolutely deafening. It's really, really loud. So if we could get that sorted, and the phone book. I mean, he doesn't really use the phone book all the time, but it would be good if that was sorted and the navigation thing got sorted out. If that got sorted out, I don't think this unit would really have any problems, because other than that, it's really, really good. He did ask my dad if he'd buy it again or if he'd recommend it. He said yes, he would, especially for the price, considering the other makes like C-Cane and things like that were either a lot more expensive or the tech was quite outdated. So some of them still had Android 8, or some of them had a lot less RAM or onboard storage memory and things like that. So yeah, for the price, he's really, really happy with it. He just hopes he can get those issues sorted out. And I will keep you posted in the comments as well, so keep an eye on those, or in the description of the video. If we do get those things sorted out, I'll mention exactly what we did or what the manufacturers told us to do. But yeah, overall, I think my dad's pretty happy. There was some bugs that we've ironed through, and yeah, now he's pretty happy apart from those two major things. But yeah, other than that, everything seems to work really well. Like I said, the screen's sharp, the reverse camera works, the audio quality is just the same as it was before. You've now got YouTube, Spotify, all those things that it didn't have before, and it fits in the dashboard really nicely. It looks factory, and as I said earlier, the install was pretty easy once we knew those couple of things that kind of held us back for a while. But yeah, other than that, I do recommend this head unit for the price. I just wish they'd fix those two things, or like I said, if we do find a fix, I'll let you know, because they are pretty major things that are annoying. It's kind of like the volume gets confused with the like factory volume of the car and then the Android volume, because they're kind of working separately. But even when that's turned down low, sometimes the navigation volume is still really loud. But anyway, hopefully we get those things sorted. I'll let you know if I do. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks very much for watching.